Good morning, it's Nicole and Grandma Ingrid again. We're here to show you guys how to make chicken pot pies. This is video number 3 in our chicken series, and we want to show you what to do with that leftover soup. And it is so versatile. This one chicken that we cut up for you guys can be made into so many different things. So first off, you have to know how to make pie crust. Normally we save this for our pie class that is always sold out every year. So we usually in our pie classes we do pumpkin pies and we take our pumpkins from the garden, but today we're gonna make a savory pie out of our pie crust so you guys get a sneak peek and learn how to make our foolproof Grandma Ingrid's famous pie crust. So she's gonna show you what you guys need to do, and don't forget I'll be posting the recipes down below, so we'll have the recipes there for you, but follow along with Grandma right now as she shows you what we need to do with this pie crust.
Okay, we're going to start with our flour, and if your flour's been sitting there for a while, we want you just to kind of aerate it, toss it, no need to sift or any of that, just get it going, and we're going to do the scoop and scrape method. So we've got a cup of flour we're going to put in there, and we're going to put half a cup of flour.
Right in our food processor. Now, if you don't have a food processor, you can use a mixer, a hand mixer. You can do this all by hand with a fork or with a pastry blender. That's totally fine. We just happen to do the food processor because it's quick and easy and keeps our pie crust nice and flaky. And we'll talk about that in just a minute.
KitchenAid will do. And I've measured out another cup of flour, but I'm not going to put it in yet. I'm just going to leave it right there.
This is a recipe that shows you the importance of reading a recipe from start to finish, because it does call for 2.5 cups of flour, but you're going to reserve that extra cup and not add it now. That's the biggest mistake. People will just add it all in and your pie crust won't be as soft and flaky as you want it.
Okay, this is 2 tablespoons of sugar, and all that does is help brown it up and just give it just an edge of sweetness. And then I'm putting in a teaspoon of salt, and I'm going to take in, periodically through this, it's going to be loud, but I'm just going to whirl that up for a minute.
Now, because we're making this a pot pie, if we wanted to, we could add some herbs to our pie crust. We could add some garlic, salt, pepper, anything we want like that to make it a savory pie crust. We can add that, and we would add that now with our flour so it evenly distributes through it, and it's not just going to be all clumped in one spot. You want it all evenly distributed, so you'd add that now. You could add fresh or dried herbs if you wanted.
And you want your herbs in that flour, coated with that flour, so they will evenly distribute. So we're going to put that in, and I have cut up in little chunks here.
I want to show you. These are just little chunks right here. Now, one of the secrets to this pie crust is there's a mix of butter, and yes, we use salted butter. You can use unsalted butter, but because all we have in our house right now is salted butter, we're going to use our salted butter. So this is just butter that has been frozen. Put it in your freezer, freeze it, and you're going to use it ice cold, because the key to this pie crust is you want to keep it as cold as possible, and that's going to keep that butter from melting, and you're going to have a nice flaky crust.
And that's why you want to use the food processor or mixer or something, because your hands become your worst enemy, because they have so much heat. So we're going to dump in.
This is also butter flavored Crisco, and we're using 2 different kinds of fat here because the butter flavored Crisco has a higher melting point, so it's not going to melt as quick, and it's going to actually aid in that flakiness. But we want to use both because you want the flavor of the butter, you want that nice butteriness, but you want the higher fat content, or the higher melting point, of the Crisco. So we're going to add part Crisco, part butter, and that's in your directions as well when you get your recipe. But you want to do part of both. If you don't have it right now, you could just use all butter if you wanted to, or all Crisco, but you want it icy cold as well.
Yeah, and I cut these up and put them back in the freezer after I cut them, just to make sure they're good and
cold, because your hands are going to start melting it really quick. So that's why you want to do that. Now, the key to this pie crust, do not overmix it. You see Grandma's just doing a few short pulses. That's key, because if you overmix it, that butter's just going to be all mixed in with the flour and not have pockets of flakiness. So you can see Grandma has it just like sand, a rough sand or a couscous, something like that. It's not all blended together. And many people in our classes, we notice they don't pay attention to that and they put their finger down and put it on high and they whirl it up until it's a gooey, ooey mess of butter dough. You don't want that. You want the crumbles.
That was probably about 3 or 4 just short pulses. So now I'm going to add that reserved cup of flour. And I'm just going to mix that, just barely mix it.
Because you want that flour to coat the butter that's in there, but you don't want it completely coated because that's going to add to that flakiness. So that's why we do it in 2 sections of flour.
Now you can see there is some chunks of butter and that's okay. That's the beautiful thing. Those are going to give you that pockets of flakiness that we have in there. So we have ice water. Yeah.
Stay close to me, Grandma. Stay close. So we have a 1/4 cup measuring cup here. For a 1/4 cup is 4 tablespoons. You're going to want ice cold water because remember we have our butter frozen. If I add warm water to it, it's going to melt that butter. We want to keep it as cold as possible. So I have a 1/4 cup of ice water. And then another secret ingredient of Grandma's that we may all have in our freezer, I don't know, ice cold vodka. That's going to add liquid to our pie crust, but as it heats, the alcohol is gonna burn off and it's going to still leave your crust extra flaky. You want the liquid to be able to bring it together and mix it, but you don't want the liquid when you bake it. So the beauty of it, it's gonna evaporate. That high alcohol content is gonna evaporate and it's gonna leave you an extra flaky crust. So that's a secret ingredient of Grandma's. So we just pour that in there. We're going to give this one more good little pulse up. And you can see down here, I don't know if you can see, it starts to move in your food processor. That's all you want it mixed.
I'm going to move just...
And I'm going to take this while she's moving the flour. I'm going to dump this out. We have here a silicone mat down, and we're going to dump our pie crust right onto it. We'll move this out of the way. You can see all these crumbs, these flakes, they're all in there. It's not one big blob. Oops, sorry if I shook you guys, took you on a ride. I'm going to scrape all this out because you don't want to leave any in there. You want to have a clean bowl. As I always say in class, that's pie crust that you're not going to be able to enjoy because you left it in your bowl. And Grandma will tell you, waste not, want not. You want to use all that you can. All right.
And you can see it just comes together beautifully.
See how these crumbles? I just want to show you these crumbles. We want those. Now Grandma's going to push them together.
As quickly as possible because, again, like I said, warm hands. You don't want those warm hands in there.
I'm going to let you scooch down, Grandma. Swap you places so you can get in there. And I have some Stretch Tight here, some handy wrap, some plastic wrap that we are going to wrap our dough up in after she gets it shaped into the discs. Now you're going to see Grandma shapes them into discs. That way it starts out a circle and is easier to roll out. That's a good little tip and trick from Grandma. You want them already in that shape so your dough goes, ooh, I like to be a circle. I'm going to roll out into a beautiful, perfect circle for you. Otherwise you might end up with a square pie, and you don't want a square pie unless you're making it in a square pie tin. So she's going to flatten it out, and she makes hers a little bit bigger. You can weigh your pie dough out so you have equal parts, but you don't have to. You can just judge it by eye. You will have probably extra dough from this, and we'll show you what to do with that extra dough.
Okay, now I just try to make it even all the way around. A nice little cylinder.
All right, and we're just going to wrap this up real tight. And we're going to put this back in the refrigerator because, like we said, we want it icy cold. And it's going to help you and save you when you roll it out. And you want to keep all these, see these chunks of butter in there? You want to keep those because, once again, nobody wants a tough, thick pie crust. You want that flakiness. And we're going to give some of those name brand people a run for their money with our pie crust. You don't need to buy it at the store anymore. You guys know Grandma's secret. And you can see how quick that was. It was super easy. I'm going to go ahead and put these in the refrigerator. And Grandma's going to get her station ready for rolling out her pie dough. And you want to leave those in there for at least 45 minutes, half hour. Magica TV, we have some ready for you. So I'm just going to actually put the top one back in, but I'm going to unwrap this for Grandma. And then she's going to start rolling, and I'm going to put the top one back in because I want to keep it nice and cold because we're not going to roll the top out yet.
So you take, and you don't want it to stick, though. You don't want to over flour, but you want enough flour so that your pie dough does not stick. That's one of the worst things when you get this beautiful circle all rolled out and you can't get it up off the mat. So make sure that you are moving it all the time.
And you see how Grandma started with a bigger disc? So she hasn't even had to roll that much, and it's already a big, beautiful circle. So that is important. If you start, give yourself a head start. Let's give ourselves some grace and do it bigger so we can roll out less. And then you're not touching it as much. If you have like a marble rolling pin, you can get it nice and cold. If you don't own a rolling pin, like I always say, use a nice cold bottle of Chardonnay and roll it out, and it will keep that butter even colder, and so it will roll out easier. You don't have to have any fancy tools, a rolling pin or anything. All my rolling pins are over here at Grandma's, but I can use a bottle of wine or my bottle of vodka, but it's got some ice crystals on it. You might not want to use it.
You don't want your crust wet. So take your pie plate, turn it upside down, and eyeball it. You got about an inch all the way around, you're good to go.
Now, Grandma's going to show you. This is one of the best tricks that I've seen Grandma teach us, because how do you get this pie crust into that pie tin?
You can take and you can put it on your rolling pin, and then you got to fiddle with it and all that kind of stuff. This is the way I prefer to do it, is put a little flour, and I like to put it in quarters, set it down, and then that little point goes right in the middle. And then you open it up, and you open it up there, and you don't stretch a pie crust. You just move it into shape, because if you stretch it, it's just going to all come right back. So, if you have any little tears or anything, just mold it back together. It's fine.
And we didn't grease this pie pan or anything because there's enough butter in this that it doesn't need it. It will come out of your pie tin perfect. Now, say we're making a family style pie here, but say you don't want a family style. It's just you. We like to do small little ramekins. These are oven safe little ramekins. You can make some out of little aluminum pans or anything like that. You can do individual size. I want to show you here while Grandma's cutting that. I have some individual sizes here. These are what I do for my family. I make a bunch up ahead of time and I freeze them. So these I just took out of my freezer. I have one here and I have a little bit bigger one in case my husband and I just want to cook one. And I wrap them up really good. These are raw. Wrap them up really good with handy wrap and put them in a Ziploc and throw them in the freezer. And they turn out beautiful. Who needs to buy a boxed one? You know, a Marie Callender's or whatever brand you buy, when you could make your own, and it's so delicious. And with my pie crust, this one happens to have herbs in it, and it's so delicious. So don't forget, you can add herbs to your pie crust if you want. So Grandma saves her extra little pie crust, and we'll show you what to do with that.
So I'm just going to pinch this. I turn it under and just kind of pinch it in. And then we're going to fill it with our filling here in a little bit. And while I'm doing this, we're going to talk to you about our filling.
Okay, so our filling. We used our leftover chicken soup. So what I did is I took and I drained my juices off of my filling. You can see there's still some juices in there. That's totally fine. You want to have about 5 cups of filling. Here you can see I have 4 cups.
Depending on what size pie.
So this is a 10-inch pie plate. So most pie plates are 9.5, 10 inches big. So I would aim for 5 cups of pie filling. Now you can see I only had 4 cups left. So what I'm going to do is I had some leftover rice. You can chop up some extra vegetables and put it in there. Those frozen vegetables we froze earlier in the week, I could throw those in here. But I have leftover rice, and I'm just going to add this to my filling until it gets up to 5 cups. If you have potatoes, leftover baked potatoes or boiled potatoes, you can add those in there to add extra filling to it. But you want your pie to be nice and full because you want to get that big, hearty, delicious bite. So you want to have at least 5 cups. Now, you're going to say, well, I want mine to have that yummy creaminess, that juice that comes out of it, the sludge. I don't want to call it sludge, but so what you're going to do is you're going to take that stock that you poured off of your soup and save about 2 cups of it at least, and save the rest and freeze it, and you can use it for other things. Start your chicken soup off earlier. But so I have 2 cups here, and I'm going to mix in my cornstarch.
Now this is cold. Remember,
cold.
This is all cold.
So we used it cold. So I have my cold stock here, and I'm going to add in 3 tablespoons of cornstarch to my 2 cups, because you want about 1.5 tablespoons per cup of liquid. So I'm going to add in my 3 tablespoons.
Whenever you're using cornstarch as a thickener, the rule of thumb is 1 tablespoon per cup of liquid. But we have still liquid in here, and our vegetables still exude liquid, so that's why we bumped it up to 1.5 tablespoons per cup.
And you want it to be cold, and then you won't get those clumps of cornstarch. We've all tried to make gravy or different things, or add cornstarch as a thickener. If you add it to hot liquid, that's when you're going to get your chunks, your little balls of white in there. If you add it to cold liquid, look, no chunks, just totally mixed in. And then you're going to go ahead and heat this. You can heat this on your stove, or I heat this, because it's in a microwave safe thing, in the microwave. I do it in 1-minute increments, and you want it to get hot, and that's when you're going to know it's thickened. So Magica TV, because you guys don't want to see me microwave, I have my slurry here. I heated this up for 3 minutes, a total of 3 minutes. I did it in 1-minute increments.
You have a spatula right here?
I'm going to dump this now into my pot pie filling. And I'm going to mix this all around in there. Scrape this all out, because that's all just goodness. And it's all flavored like your chicken broth, because we're using all of the chicken soup that we had left over. Waste not, want not. So I have my slurry, I have my pie filling, and I'm going to mix this up. Mix, mix, mix. Because we want it all coated in that slurry. So when you cut into your pie, it's not going to all run out like pure broth. It's going to be a thick, yummy chicken pot pie. All right, so now I'm going to dump this in my pie. And if I happen to have extra filling, what I like to do, because like I told you, I make a bunch and I freeze them, is I save it. And if I don't have pie crust done, I just freeze it in Ziploc bags in probably like 2-cup increments or whatever it may be, and then I can fill my pies later on, or I can use that, heat it up, put it over rice or whatever, and because this filling is delicious by itself. So you can use it for whatever you want.
We need the
So
top.
Grandma's going to roll out her top pie crust.
So you can see, doesn't take long.
We have our pie crust number 2. And this one, like we said, we put it back in the fridge so it stayed cold, because I want a crusty, nice, delicious top pie.
And there's
So with the extra pie crust, I like to cut out little shapes to put on top of my pie, because we may be quarantined, we may be stuck at home right now, but we're not always going to be. And who doesn't want to brighten up somebody's day and have little designs on top of your pie?
Make it sweet. Make it fun. Let the kids help. You know? That's one of their favorite things, is to cut out cookies. And we're going to show you in just a minute. But we start with getting all of our pie done first, before we let the kids have at it.
Especially if your kids are bored and looking for something to do, why not let them play with your extra pie dough? And then they can make little cookies out of it, or little savory crackers if you made your pie crust savory. So you can do whatever, you know, your kids can have fun with the leftovers and cut your hearts out. Cut their shapes out. So Grandma's going to put this on top of her pie crust. She does the same thing, folds it up into quarters. And then you're going to aim for that point right in the center of your pie. And it's going to go right on that filling. It's no problem. And here's another tip from Grandma. You can use a knife and cut your pie crust. Grandma uses scissors, and it works really well. So see this extra pie crust she's cutting off? I'm just going to be right here cutting out little shapes for the top of our pie.
Now, all the time we're doing this, you would have your oven preheating. You want a hot oven, 400, and you want to have a cookie sheet in the bottom of your oven, the bottom rack.
The lowest position of your oven, and you want to put a cookie sheet in there and let it get hot, as hot as your oven is preheated. That way, when you go to put your pie in, you're going to set it right on top of that cookie sheet, and it's going to help brown up and crisp up that bottom crust, because nobody likes to have their pot pie, cut it, and the bottom crust is kind of soggy because the filling kind of got wet on it. You want it crispy, so that having that hot cookie sheet in the bottom will help it crisp up so beautifully. So I'm just cutting out these little hearts, and what we're going to do is we're going to egg wash, or we're going to heavy cream. We have heavy cream here, the top of our crust, and that's going to help with the browning. You can use an egg wash, you can use regular milk, you can use, anything like that, but you just want to add it to it. It's going to help it brown up real nice and look pretty. So we're just going to egg wash it. And you see Grandma's pinching close the top with her knuckle. If you can't master that, come to our pie class. She'll teach you more hands-on. But you just kind of make it. It's a delicious pie regardless of how your crust looks on there. So you're just going to kind of push and crimp the top together. Okay? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to egg wash my little hearts.
You can egg wash the whole thing.
And I'm going to egg wash the whole thing.
It's just
my cream wash. So I'm going to just wash my whole pie to brown it.
And it also works as a glue for your
my little hearts.
Little hearts here.
All right. And you don't have to get it perfect, but it's just going to help with the browning. The crust on top here usually browns up a lot, so I don't put as much of the wash on it just because it doesn't need any help. And Grandma's going to show you a trick as I put these hearts on there. I don't know why I'm having troubles with that word today.
I take a piece of foil. Yes, they have silicone covers and shields, but just take some foil and put it on. I suggest that you put it on now before you ever put it in the oven, because trying to put this on a hot rim of a pie is very difficult. So if you put it on now, and then when it's just about done, you can pull it off, but it should be golden brown underneath there anyway. And it just keeps that from browning up too much. And so
we have our pie crust like this. I'm going to cut some slits in the top. That's going to let the steam out. So I do 3 or 4 little slits. This one I'm just going to do 3. And you can see how beautiful this pie looks. Now you're going to we like to just do a little seasoning on top of our pie, just to add a little flavor to that crust, if you haven't already herbed it up or seasoned it. And then we'll put this straight in the oven, and we'll bake it for about 45 minutes. You want the internal temperature to be 160 degrees, and you want your crust to be nice golden brown.
Yeah,
so
depending on how big it is, 45 minutes, maybe even an hour.
Magic of TV. Look at this beauty that came out of the oven. It's still warm. I can't wait to dig into it. But look at this beautiful pie. This is what your pot pie is going to look like. Grandma and I love chicken pot pies and love making them. They're delicious and a great use of that leftover chicken soup. So we hope you guys enjoy. If you wanted to make this vegetarian, I put in the recipe. You would just leave out the chicken and make a vegetable soup, or add a bunch of veggies and potatoes and rice, and add that slurry to it that you're going to make out of cold water with a little bit of vegetable stock, and you're going to add just veggies to it. You don't even have to have meat. You can make it just how you like it. So we love you guys. We hope you guys have a great day, and I hope you guys are always learning something. If you have questions, message us below. Let us know what your questions are, and have a great day. Stay safe and stay healthy.
I hope you enjoy.